Up All Night
with Rod Sharp.
Islamic State sent out a communique and a video late tonight taking all credit for the Brussels attacks and also apparently showing fighters in Syria giving sweets to children as some kind of celebration of this. Oliver Guita is the managing director at Global Strat, which is a security and political risk firm for governments and multinationals. And when we spoke, I asked him if he could tell us how much of a security failure yesterday's events in Brussels represent.
It was both a security failure, but also, more importantly, a political failure. Because if you don't give enough means to your security services, if you don't make security your priority, then how do you want the security services to follow every lead and to have the manpower to basically go after the terrorists or the potential jihadists? So the issue is the same all across the board, from Washington to London to Paris to Brussels. There's still not enough means for security services, and they have to make guesses.
You're saying then that we don't need to feel superior because we're no better off.
Exactly. When it comes to the wherewithal of the British security services of following, monitoring 3,000 potential jihadists in the country, you would need for that 90,000 officers, which obviously the UK doesn't have. So out of those 3,000, you have to make decisions of which ones you think are going to hit us first. So every day, the security services have to make decisions mostly on hunches or on their experience to decide which one is a priority. We've seen in many cases that in Paris attacks, in other attacks in the West, in Australia, all those people were on the radar of security services. At some point, the Kouachi brothers behind the Charlie Hebdo attack were followed for 3 years, and then surveillance was dropped because they didn't do anything. And then a few months later, they attacked Charlie Hebdo. So that's the kind of really means that we need to get on board if we're going to be serious about security.
So is that what was happening last week in Forêt? They were acting on a hunch, on a suspicion that something was about to go off.
Right, because unfortunately in Brussels, what we have compared to other countries is, I think, a grassroots movement that allows Abdeslam and other people to feel very safe. Because which terrorist would go back and after being chased by all the police in Europe and just end up 500 yards from where he lives? I mean, that's unseen. So obviously, in 4 months, there must have been people that have seen him and not say anything. And that's what I'm really concerned about when it comes to Belgium.
So, the huge question, obviously, is what the relationship was of today's attacks to what happened last week in Brussels. Is it possible that there was no relationship?
If it were in the US or the UK, I would say it's possible there's no relationship. But this is a very tight network. I mean, Brussels and Molenbeek and Belgium are still very small. You know, if the likelihood of them not being linked is close to zero because of the Belgium factor. And also, when you think about it, how many excellent bomb makers are in Brussels? We know that the security services in Belgium have been on the lookout for the bomb maker of the Paris attacks. And I suspect that is likely the one that has provided the suicide belts today.
So if all their efforts are focused on finding a bomb factory, if they find that bomb factory, their lives are going to get a lot easier. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no, because then, obviously, as we've seen in Paris, most of the damage and the victims were killed by gunshots. So, we're talking about potentially even if you were to stop the bomb maker, jihadists going in and attacking cafe or restaurant or cinemas with their Kalashnikovs. So that won't be a solution.
Yeah. And if I was a bomb maker, I suppose I would have made jolly sure that I'd have closed down before this attack took place and removed all trace of it.
Yes, you would, but as I said, a lot of things could have happened in the middle of this, and I'm not sure that he had moved to other countries.
When you look at the Belgian setup and you compare it to the setup in Paris, I mean, for years, ever since the student riots of 1968, Paris police have been on your case. I mean, they're a very robust police force. How do you compare policing in the two places?
Look, what is really interesting is that as far as targets, for instance, they didn't go after public transport in Paris. So that's very significant for me. They didn't go after a train station, after the airport, or after a bus. And unfortunately, as of today, the main thing lacking on the Belgian security services is security 101 when it comes to those targets. It's unfortunately unacceptable that the security was not beefed up at the airport and all the metro stations. I was at the Zaventem airport just a few weeks ago, and, with my paranoia, I asked myself, anyone could walk into the terminal and blow himself up. Same thing when I was riding the metro in Malbec and other stations. There was no security. So after you get to arrest Abdeslam on Friday, and you have the Belgian government telling us that there's an imminent attack in the works and that there are possibly close to 30 jihadists on the loose, why not raise the terror alert to 4, which is the highest, and beef up security in regular targets?
And that was not done?
No, that was not. And until today, there's a major issue as well with the train station, because after the attack on the Thalys train last summer that was foiled by the American GIs, the French have implemented on the Paris Gare du Nord metal detectors for anyone and checks for anyone that goes and take this train to Brussels. The most stupid thing is that on the way back from Brussels to Paris, taking this exact same train, you have no security. So you have no metal detectors and you have no checks. So basically a terrorist can say, look, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to travel from Paris to Brussels and go through metal detectors. I'll do it the other way. And that's still what's happening today in Belgium. This kind of thing is unfortunately something that is difficult to swallow.
And this is despite the fact that Brussels is the hub of the illegal European arms trade.
Exactly. And that is at stern. It has replaced for me Londonistan. Bruxellistan is from far now way over what Londonistan was in the 1990s.
Well, I know what I'd be demanding if I was an ordinary Bruxellois. I'd be expecting a lot more security. Do you see any evidence of political determination to do that in Belgium?
A couple of things. I mean, what you have to give to them is that the army and the city looks like on a war footing, because the army is everywhere. You see soldiers patrolling. I mean, this is a very rare scene that you see only in Paris and Brussels when it comes to the army. So there's not much more that they can do in the streets. They can, as I said, implement, security in the transport system. That they can do. But as well, when it comes to political determination, they have to start listening and understanding that their lenient way of dealing with Islamists on the basis of multiculturalism or on any kind of leniency has pushed them to become what it is today. And I think the law of the silence that we've seen in Molenbeek, that nobody gave Abdeslam out to the services for 4 months, is telling of how some people view themselves on the other side.